want to kind of follow where we go from here. The latest advisory is in from the National Hurricane Center. Still a tropical depression, 35-mile-per-hour winds, elongated center with multiple areas of spin. But that doesn't mean that there's non-impacts on the way. In fact, because of this current forecast, tropical storm warnings have been issued from the Cayman Islands through central Cuba, with tropical storm watches over western Cuba. And I think later tonight, we will probably get watches in the Keys and in South Florida because we're getting to be in that time frame. Throughout the day today, there were two different aircraft sampling the storm. One from the Air Force making its way home. One from NOAA is still nearby, sampling both near the storm and the area around it, which is also crucially important. That particular flight from NOAA is consistently seeing winds right near tropical storm strength, although also in the rain, which tends to add some of the sensed wind speed from the instruments. So maybe a little bit overdone, which is why we don't have a tropical storm just yet, although the forecast does call for one, and there's really nothing in the way that wouldn't suggest that we'll get there. So be prepared for a tropical storm sooner rather than later, and be prepared for those crawls on the bottom of your screen at home saying that you have tropical storm watches in South Florida. I think they are coming. We can also learn a lot by looking at the imagery from the water vapor. This is our big trough that's coming in. There's a lot of dry air with that. That will eventually end the strengthening phase. I think once this storm gets into the Gulf, there will be a lot of dry air nearby. Until then, though, this trough is number one, giving some good lungs to the storm. Lots of upper air motion moving away, which allows for more rising air and a lower pressure. So that'll help the organization. But there's also some shear because of that trough nearby. And so you put all this together and you take a look at that forecast that you had from the National Hurricane Center and from the models, right? They ramp up to tropical storm force strength. Then because you're meeting up with that shear, you start to decrease a little bit. Eventually you'll have dry air come in and you'll decrease those winds even a little bit more, and that is the current thinking as to why we kind of top out near hurricane status or tropical storm strength. It's not out of the question that we get to a hurricane. None of the models are suggesting that right now, and to be honest, the Hurricane Center forecast that I showed you is right up there at the upper echelon of these models, many of them suggesting that those headwinds will kind of keep this at bay as a more modest tropical storm with regards to the wind. But that doesn't always tell you the whole story. Here is one model's depiction of the rain, and gosh, it is really going to be a soggy setup. The center somewhere south of Cuba, as seen by the USGFS model, you are already picking up the rainfall rates in South Florida as early as this weekend. Early this weekend, Sunday that continues, Monday that continues. Tuesday that continues. You can get the idea. We're setting up for quite a long stretch here, Chris, of very rainy conditions in Florida and beyond through the southeast when this eventually gets picked up. So I think that may wind up being the calling card of this storm when all is said and done.
Yeah, and when it's all said and done, Florida's getting something. I think that is certainly fair to say. So one of the somethings that I think is pretty much a lock is going to be the flood threat. Now, you're not necessarily guaranteed flooding, but you are guaranteed enough heavy rain that could lead to some flooding somewhere down the line. So flood watch is posted, especially in the urban areas. In fact, if you just look at all of the road networks, they'll kind of come to an end going into the Everglades. So this is where you have a lot of concrete, a lot of pavement, and that water is just going to run off. It gets into the drainage systems, and if there's too much rain, it overwhelms the drainage systems, and you end up with some of that flash flooding. Key West will be kind of in the forefront. You know, it's going to be the part of Florida that will likely feel the winds and see the rain first, with thunderstorms possible. And you know, this is a rough idea of how strong the winds are going to be. They could be stronger, depending on the track, maybe a little bit weaker. But the potential here is 40 to 50 mile an hour winds in Key West. And on Saturday, showers and thunderstorms on the East Coast. And then again, the flash flood threat for tomorrow through Sunday morning continues, with 5 to 10 inches of rain within the realm of possibilities. And when we say that, there's always the chance there's locally higher amounts. So just keep that in mind. The onshore flow also, as the low comes up from the south, will create a rip current risk as well.